There are places in Tennessee where history refuses to tell the whole story. Ancient structures whose purpose remains unknown. Petroglyphs carved into stone long before recorded history began. Burial mounds aligned with celestial events in ways that suggest a deeper understanding of the cosmos than science believes possible for the people of the time. These aren't local legends or tall tales passed down through generations. These are documented sites and artifacts that archaeologists still struggle to fully explain. From mysterious stone formations hidden deep in the Appalachian foothills to artifacts that seem impossibly out of place for their time. Tonight, we're uncovering the forgotten enigmas of Tennessee's ancient past. Evidence that challenges the accepted timeline and raises questions about who might have walked these lands long before modern history began. Before we dive in, here's a quick note. The visuals in this video aren't necessary to enjoy the stories. They make the journey more immersive, but you can follow everything just through the audio. So feel free to let this play in the background while you work, relax, or even drift off to sleep to these perplexing mysteries. And if you'd like to support the channel and see more investigations like this, consider subscribing. Now, let's begin our journey into Tennessee's most enduring ancient enigmas. Imagine holding an object carved over 1,000 years ago. Intricate swirls, strange creatures, and symbols that look almost familiar, yet just out of reach. That's the haunting reality of the artifacts left behind by the people of the Southeastern Ceremonial Complex, or SECC, right here in Tennessee. These aren't just ancient tools or broken pottery. These are masterpieces of art and symbolism, crafted with stunning precision. But here, the unsettling part. Despite decades of study, modern researchers still can't crack the code. What do these symbols mean? Who were they meant to speak to? And why do they feel like a message we're no longer equipped to understand? The SECC flourished across the American Southeast roughly between 900 and 1500 AD, a time when powerful chiefdoms were rising across the region. Tennessee, particularly the Cumberland and Tennessee River valleys, was a hotspot for this culture. They left behind artifacts that take your breath away, engraved shell gorgets worn as pendants, intricately carved stone pipes depicting otherworldly figures, embossed copper plates shimmering with geometric patterns, and pottery adorned with symbols that seem to dance across the surface. The craftsmanship is undeniable. These weren't doodles. They were deliberate, sacred communications. But communications of what? Take the famous Cox Mound-style gorgets, often found in burial mounds. Picture a large circular shell disc. Carved into its center is a figure with wings, sometimes holding ceremonial objects surrounded by swirling motifs or intricate cross-hatching. Is it a birdman deity, a shaman in flight, or perhaps a representation of a celestial being? No one knows for sure. The symbols accompanying it, spirals, concentric circles, forked eyes, don't match any known writing system from the Americas. They whisper of a complex cosmology, a way of seeing the world that's been utterly lost. Archaeologists have cataloged these symbols, given them names like the forked eye motif or the bilobed arrow, but the language they speak remains silent to us. Then there are the enigmatic stone statues and palettes, like those found at the Hickson site near Chattanooga. These often depict humanoid figures with exaggerated features, large, haunting eyes, elaborate headdresses, sometimes kneeling or holding objects. The symbols carved onto their bodies or the palettes they hold are even more abstract. Zigzags, nested curves, dots arranged in precise patterns. Were these ritual instructions, maps to a spiritual realm, genealogical records of powerful families? Theories abound. Some researchers see connections to celestial events, suggesting the symbols track the movements of the sun, moon, or stars. Others believe they represent complex spiritual concepts, perhaps pathways between worlds or symbols of life, death, and rebirth. But concrete proof, it remains elusive. The context is gone. The people who understood the meaning took it with them. Why is deciphering these symbols so incredibly difficult? Unlike ancient Egypt with its Rosetta Stone, there's no bilingual key for the SECC. No descendant culture holds the oral traditions that clearly explain these specific images. The Spanish explorers who arrived later documented the cultures they encountered, but the SECC had largely declined or transformed by then, and the explorers rarely grasped the deep spiritual significance of the iconography they saw. Furthermore, the symbols themselves are highly stylized and abstract. A spiral might mean journey in one context, water in another, or the underworld elsewhere. Without a living guide, we're left guessing. Could they represent a lost language? Some researchers speculate that certain repeating patterns might be more than decoration. They could be a form of proto-writing, conveying names, places, or events. Think of them like heraldic symbols for powerful clans, or perhaps mnemonic devices for storytellers reciting sacred myths. The sheer consistency of certain motifs across vast distances, found from Tennessee down to Florida and over to Oklahoma, suggests a shared symbolic language understood across the SECC world. But translating it, that bridge seems burned. The cultural rupture caused by European contact, disease, and displacement was simply too profound. So what are we left with? Boxes filled with stunning artifacts in Tennessee museums, artifacts that pulse with silent meaning. We can admire the skill, study the materials, date the layers they were found in. We can make educated guesses based on comparisons with later southeastern Native American iconography and oral traditions. But the core message, the specific stories and prayers encoded in those swirling lines and stylized figures, remains stubbornly locked away. They stand as a testament not just to the artistic brilliance of Tennessee's ancient inhabitants, but to the fragile nature of human knowledge. How much of our own world's meaning might one day become just as inscrutable? The SECC symbols are a humbling reminder. Sometimes, the past keeps its most profound secrets close, whispering just beyond our understanding. What urgent messages might still be waiting, silently carved in shell and stone, for ears that can no longer hear them? Beneath the modern hustle of Nashville, beneath the streets and neighborhoods, lies a silent city of stone. Not skyscrapers, but tombs, thousands of them. This is the enduring mystery of the Nashville Stone Box Graves, a burial practice so concentrated, so unique to this specific area, that it baffles archaeologists to this day. Why here? Why only here? And what compelled an ancient people to bury their dead in such an intricate, labor-intensive way, unlike anything seen elsewhere in North America? Picture a simple box, roughly the size of a person. But instead of wood, its walls are crafted from thin slabs of limestone, carefully split from the abundant bedrock of Middle Tennessee. A flat stone forms the bottom, more slabs form the sides, and another large slab caps it off as a lid. Inside, placed with care, lay the remains of the deceased, often curled on their side. Sometimes a few personal items accompanied them, a simple pot, a stone tool, perhaps a shell bead. Then the earth was returned, covering the stone box, simple in concept, yet profoundly distinct. While stone-lined graves exist elsewhere in small numbers, nowhere on the continent do they appear in the sheer density found in the Nashville Basin. Estimates suggest tens of thousands once existed, clustered around ancient village sites and prominent mounds. Who built these silent stone chambers? The evidence points squarely to the people archaeologists call the Middle Cumberland culture, thriving in the area roughly between 800 and 1300 AD, overlapping significantly with the later SECC period. They were mound builders, farmers, and sophisticated inhabitants of the region, but their burial custom sets them starkly apart. While their contemporaries elsewhere used earthen pits, charnel houses, or simple mound burials, the Middle Cumberland people invested immense effort in quarrying, shaping, transporting, and assembling these stone boxes, one grave at a time. Imagine the labor, finding the right stone, splitting it into usable slabs, carrying them, sometimes over significant distances, and meticulously constructing each box. This wasn't a casual choice. It was a deeply ingrained cultural imperative. The how is understood more or less. They used stone picks and hammers to fracture the limestone along natural bedding planes, prying up slabs that were typically 2 to 4 inches thick. The boxes were usually assembled directly in the grave shaft. But the why? That's where the mystery deepens. Why go to so much trouble? Theories weave through the possibilities. Was it practical? Limestone is abundant, and stone boxes offer excellent protection against scavenging animals and the elements, preserving the body more securely than a simple earthen grave. But if practicality were the only driver, why isn't this method found everywhere limestone exists? It is. This points powerfully towards belief. Perhaps the stone represented permanence, a durable vessel for the journey to the afterlife. The limestone itself, formed from ancient sea life, might have held specific spiritual significance, a connection to the earth or a symbolic return to primordial origins. The act of carefully enclosing the body in stone might have been seen as containing the spirit, protecting the living community from the powerful forces associated with death, or conversely, protecting the deceased in their transition. The frequent clustering of graves around central mounds, often ceremonial or elite burial centers, suggests these stone boxes were part of a complex social and cosmological landscape. Were they markers of clan identity? Or a belief that stone provided a necessary barrier between the realms of the living and the dead? Another layer of intrigue, the positioning. While many bodies were found in the classic flexed position, curled on the side, a significant number, particularly in certain locations, were found in an unusual semi-flexed position, not fully curled, not fully extended. What ritual or belief dictated this specific posture? Was it reserved for certain individuals, leaders, shamans, or those who died under specific circumstances? The answers are buried with the bones. And then, perhaps the most perplexing question of all, why the intense concentration? The stone box grave phenomenon is overwhelmingly centered in the Nashville Basin. While similar graves appear sporadically in nearby areas like northern Alabama or Kentucky, they are rare and never approach the density seen around Nashville. Was this basin a cultural heartland, a place where this specific burial tradition originated and held especially deep meaning? Did geographical isolation play a role, allowing the custom to flourish uniquely here? Or was it tied to a specific resource, like the particularly workable limestone found in the region? Despite decades of excavation, especially as Nashville expanded, no clear answer has emerged. It's a cultural fingerprint unique to this place and time. Today, most known stone box graves have been excavated, their contents studied and often reburied. Development has claimed many sites, yet the enigma remains. Walking through certain Nashville neighborhoods, one might unknowingly pass over the remnants of this ancient necropolis. The silent stone boxes, now mostly gone, stand as a testament to a people whose deepest beliefs about death and the afterlife remain veiled. They chose stone, enduring, heavy, protective stone, to cradle their loved ones for eternity. What profound understanding of the world, what specific fears or hopes led them to build this city of the dead beneath what would become the Music City? The stones hold their secret close, leaving us to wonder about the weight of their ancient meaning. What urgent message about mortality and memory did they intend to seal within these limestone walls forever? Deep in the woods of Coffee County, Tennessee, an ancient enigma curves with the land. The old stone fort isn't made of stone at all, but earth, a massive enclosure of raised walls stretching over 1.5 miles, following the contours of a high plateau between two rivers. Built nearly 2,000 years ago, its scale is staggering. Yet its most haunting feature isn't its size, but its precision. This sprawling earthwork aligns perfectly with the rising and setting sun during the solstices and equinoxes. Why? What drove ancient Tennesseans to shape the earth with such celestial accuracy? And what sacred purpose did this place truly serve? Walk the path today and you feel it. The walls rise up to 10 feet high in places, bordered by deep ditches, channeling movement along a carefully planned route. The entire complex feels like a deliberate journey, but the true revelation comes at dawn on the summer solstice. Stand at the main entrance, a narrow 80-foot wide gateway in the southeast wall, and watch. The first rays of the sun pierce straight down the entrance corridor, flooding the interior pathway with light. At the winter solstice, the sun aligns with another key gateway in the southwest. During the equinoxes, sunlight strikes the central platform at precise angles. This isn't coincidence. It's sophisticated astronomical engineering, crafted centuries before telescopes or written records existed in North America. Who built this? Archaeologists attribute it to people of the Middle Woodland period, around 1,500 to 2,000 years ago, likely ancestors of later indigenous cultures. They weren't farmers on a large scale. They were hunter-gatherers supplemented by early gardening. Yet they moved thousands of tons of earth and stone, using bone and wooden tools to shape this monumental landscape. The effort implies deep communal purpose. But what was that purpose? The site shows little evidence of permanent settlement, few domestic artifacts, no signs of large villages inside. Instead, fragments of ceremonial pottery, stone tools, and evidence of ancient fires hint at gatherings. Was this a place of pilgrimage? A sacred space where people converged for rituals tied to the sky itself? The astronomical alignments suggest a profound connection to the cosmos. Tracking solstices and equinoxes marks the changing seasons, critical knowledge for planting, hunting, migration, and ceremonial cycles. Some researchers believe the old stone fort functioned as a giant calendar, a place where spiritual leaders observed the sun's journey to guide their people's lives. The pathway through the earthworks might have mirrored a spiritual journey. Entering through the sun's gate during a solstice could symbolize rebirth or communion with powerful forces. Others see the convergence of rivers below the plateau as significant. Water was often seen as a boundary between worlds. Did the placement amplify the site's spiritual power, linking earth, sky, and water? But mysteries linger. Why build such an elaborate structure for ceremonies that might have lasted only days each year? And why the defensive features? The high walls and narrow entrances suggest protection. Was this a sanctuary during times of conflict? A place where scattered groups gathered under truce for sacred events? Or were the walls not for defense at all, but for containment, keeping powerful spiritual energy inside, or perhaps keeping the outside world at bay during vulnerable rituals? The ditch inside the walls adds to the puzzle. Was it symbolic, representing a barrier between the mundane and the sacred? Or practical, draining water away from ceremonial grounds? Then there's the enigma of abandonment. After centuries of use, the old stone fort was left quiet. No evidence of destruction, no signs of invasion. It simply faded from active use. Did beliefs change? Did populations shift? Or did the knowledge required to interpret its celestial signals fade with time? Today, the precision of the alignments remains undeniable. Modern measurements confirm the solstice sun still enters the gateways as it did millennia ago, a silent testament to the builder's skill. Yet their voices are silent. We see the how, but the why echoes just beyond reach. Standing in the solstice light at the old stone fort, you're left with awe and unease. How did hunter-gatherers achieve such exactitude without written mathematics? What ceremonies unfolded here under the aligned sun? Was it a place of celebration, of mourning, of seeking visions? The earth walls hold their secrets close, whispering of a time when the sky wasn't just observed, it was woven into the very landscape. What profound understanding of the universe did these ancient Tennesseans possess, and why did they encode it so permanently into the soil beneath our feet? The stones they didn't use speak loudest of all, a reminder that some mysteries are built not to be solved, but to endure. Rising from the flat West Tennessee landscape like a sudden, man-made mountain, Sauls Mound defies expectation. At 72 feet tall, it's the largest prehistoric earthen mound in North America, built entirely by hand. No later additions, no modern fill. Located at Pinson Mounds State Archaeological Park, it towers over 16 other mounds in a complex sprawling across 400 acres. Built around 2,000 years ago, its scale is staggering. But its isolation deepens the mystery. Why here? In a region without major rivers or obvious strategic value, what compelled ancient people to move millions of baskets of earth to create this colossal structure? And what powerful purpose did it serve that justified such an unimaginable effort? Picture the labor. Using stone tools, bone shovels, and woven baskets, workers dug up heavy clay soil from pits nearby. Each basket load, carried on backs or dragged on hides, weighed perhaps 60 pounds. Conservatively, building Sauls Mound required moving over 15 million basket loads. Think of the generations involved. Think of the coordination, the sheer willpower. This wasn't just stacking dirt. The mound has a complex internal structure, built in distinct stages over decades, possibly centuries. Its flat top, large enough to hold several modern houses, was meticulously leveled. The sides were sculpted to precise slopes. This was engineering on a monumental scale, achieved without beasts of burden or metal tools. What drove such obsession? Pinson Mounds wasn't a city. Excavations show little evidence of large-scale permanent settlement. Instead, it was likely a ceremonial center, a gathering place for people across a vast region. Sauls Mound dominates the complex, visible for miles in every direction. Was it a symbol of power, a beacon calling the faithful, or something far more profound? Unlike many platform mounds used for elite residences or temples later in history, Sauls Mound shows no signs of buildings on its summit during its main phase. Its purpose seems purely symbolic or ritualistic. Was it a stage for ceremonies witnessed by thousands below? An axis mundi, a sacred connection point between earth and sky. The location adds layers to the puzzle. Pinson sits away from major rivers like the Mississippi or Tennessee, unlike contemporary mound centers. Instead, it's nestled near the forked Deer River headwaters, amidst wetlands and springs. Water held deep spiritual significance for many native cultures, often seen as portals to the underworld. Were the springs part of the sacred landscape? The site also sits atop a magnetic anomaly, a natural feature some researchers speculate might have been interpreted as a place of powerful earth energy. Did the builders sense something special here, a convergence of natural forces demanding monumental acknowledgement? Then there's the alignment. While not as precise as the old stone fort's solar gates, the layout of the Pinson complex, including Sauls Mound, shows awareness of celestial movements. Some mounds align with solstice sunrises, others may mark lunar standstills. Sauls Mound itself seems positioned to dominate the horizon from key viewing points within the complex. Was it a giant calendar marker? A place where priests observed the heavens from its summit, dictating the timing of rituals, plantings, or gatherings below. The height offered an unobstructed view of the sky, a vantage point for communing with celestial powers. But the greatest mystery lies in its singularity. No other mound from its time period comes close to its height. Why pour such resources into one structure? Was it a statement of unity by multiple groups, a tribute to a particularly powerful leader or deity? Or did it serve a unique, transformative function? Some theories suggest it was a place of emergence, a symbolic representation of the primordial mound from which life sprang in some native cosmologies. Rituals performed here might have reenacted creation myths. Others propose it was a massive burial monument, though excavations have found few human remains within it compared to its size. Perhaps its power was in its presence alone, an undeniable manifestation of communal belief made tangible in earth. Today, climbing Sauls Mound is a pilgrimage. The view is commanding, but the questions loom larger. What ceremonies echoed across this plain? What songs were sung as baskets of earth were laid down? Why did the focus shift elsewhere, leaving Pinson's mounds to be reclaimed by forest until modern times? The sheer audacity of Sauls Mound humbles us. It stands as a testament to the vision, cooperation, and spiritual depth of Tennessee's ancient people, a people who reshaped their world not for conquest or shelter, but for a purpose that resonates only as a whisper in the earth. What urgent need, what profound connection to the sacred, drove them to build a mountain where nature provided none? The mound offers no answers, only silent, imposing grandeur, a riddle written in soil that refuses to be buried. Tucked away on private land near Knoxville, a cluster of strange markings etched into a limestone outcrop whispers a riddle no one can solve. These are the marble Springs Petroglyphs, lines, circles, possible animal shapes, and cryptic symbols carved into the rock face. At first glance, they feel ancient, mysterious, resonant with lost meanings. But look closer and doubt creeps in. Could they be the idle scratches of 18th century settlers, or an elaborate hoax meant to deceive? Decades after their discovery, experts remain deeply divided. What's truly written on this stone? And why does its ambiguity feel like a deliberate challenge to our understanding of Tennessee's past? The carvings themselves are the heart of the puzzle. Unlike the highly stylized symbols of the SECC found elsewhere in Tennessee, these markings are more abstract. You'll see deep grooves forming concentric circles, interconnected lines resembling crude maps or webs, shallow cupules, small, carved depressions, and shapes some interpret as stick figures or four-legged animals. There's an undeniable rawness to them. They lack the intricate polish of known woodland or Mississippian period petroglyphs found in other states. Yet, they don't quite match typical pioneer graffiti either. No clear initials, dates, or recognizable frontier symbols. They occupy a frustrating middle ground, feeling both purposeful and oddly out of place. The ancient art theory holds a powerful allure. Could these be remnants of a much older, perhaps archaic period culture, thousands of years before the mound builders? Proponents point to the site's location near a spring, places often considered sacred portals or gathering spots by ancient peoples. The cupules, in particular, are a common feature in rock art worldwide, sometimes linked to fertility rituals, star maps, or territorial markers. Some see similarities in style to very early petroglyphs documented in the southeastern U.S., though none are identical. If ancient, these carvings would be incredibly rare for East Tennessee, hinting at a deep, undocumented spiritual or cultural practice tied to this specific landscape. What forgotten ceremonies might have happened here? Then there's the settler theory. Marble Springs was the home of John Sevier, Tennessee's first governor in the late 1700s. The land saw plenty of pioneer activity. Could the carvings be frontier graffiti, bored children, hunters marking a spot, or even early land survey symbols? Some see the interconnected lines as possible property boundaries or crude maps of local trails. A few markings vaguely resemble letters or numbers, perhaps poorly executed or weathered beyond recognition. The argument hinges on simplicity. Why assume ancient origins when simpler, more recent explanations exist? After all, settlers carved their names and messages on rocks across the frontier. But why carve these specific, seemingly non-utilitarian symbols here? And why is there no clear historical record mentioning them if they were known to settlers? This leads to the most controversial possibility: a hoax. Could someone have carved these markings in the 19th or even 20th century to create a sensation or mimic ancient art? The timing of their wider recognition adds fuel to this fire. While locals might have known of them earlier, they gained significant archaeological attention relatively late. Skeptics argue the carvings lack the deep patina and weathering expected of truly ancient rock art exposed to centuries of Tennessee's elements. The tool marks, some suggest, look fresher than they should. Could it have been an attempt to boost local history tourism or even a deliberate archaeological forgery? Proving a hoax is as difficult as proving antiquity. Who would have done it? When? And to what end? The lack of a clear perpetrator or motive leaves this theory hanging in unsettling limbo. The core dilemma is the utter lack of definitive context. No associated artifacts, no stone tools, pottery shards, or charcoal from ancient fires have been found directly linked to the carvings to confirm their age. No pioneer diary or map explicitly references them. Scientific dating methods like cation ratio dating or lichenometry, used on rock surfaces elsewhere, are notoriously tricky and haven't yielded conclusive results for marble springs. The carvings exist in a vacuum, detached from any clear archaeological layer or historical record. They are orphans in time. So what are we left with? A rock face etched with questions. Visiting the site evokes a strange mix of wonder and frustration. The markings feel like they should mean something. They draw the eye, inviting interpretation. Yet every theory crumbles under scrutiny. Were they sacred symbols for rituals lost before memory? A settler's attempt to leave a mark, now stripped of its original meaning? Or a deliberate puzzle carved into stone, ensuring its mystery would endure? The marble Springs Petroglyphs defy categorization. They are a reminder that the past isn't always neatly labeled. Sometimes, it leaves behind fragments so ambiguous they become mirrors, reflecting our own desire to understand, and the unsettling possibility that some secrets, whether ancient, recent, or fabricated, are destined to remain carved in stone and silence. What truth hides behind these enigmatic lines, and will we ever possess the key to unlock it? Deep within the cool, dark recesses of Tennessee caves, archaeologists have made discoveries that defy simple geography. Tucked beside the bones of ancient bears and fragments of local pottery, they've unearthed artifacts with a clear and unmistakable origin. The Cades Pond culture of north-central Florida, over 500 miles to the south. Distinctive pottery styles, unique shell pendants, and specialized tool types, all characteristic of a people who lived near Gainesville around 300 to 600 AD, found resting in the rocky soils of Tennessee. How did objects from the humid coastal plains end up in the caves of the landlocked Appalachian foothills? What extraordinary journey brought them here, and what does their presence whisper about connections lost to time? The Cades Pond artifacts are unmistakable. Imagine intricate pottery stamped with complex geometric designs, zigzags, concentric circles, and punctates, patterns rarely seen in contemporary Tennessee cultures. Picture delicate ornaments made from distinctive Florida seashells like lightning whelks or Atlantic cockles, carved into beads or pendants. Think of tools fashioned from honey-colored Florida chair, a stone not native to Tennessee. Finding one such item might be curious. Finding multiple types in multiple caves transforms curiosity into a profound mystery. These aren't random trinkets. They represent the tangible culture of a specific people from a specific place, far, far away. The sheer distance is staggering, 500 miles, on foot through dense forests, across major rivers like the Tennessee, over mountains, and through territories occupied by other groups. This wasn't a quick trip. It represented a monumental undertaking in an era without pack animals, wagons, or maps as we know them. So, how did these objects traverse such a vast and challenging landscape? The most plausible explanation is long-distance trade networks. We know ancient indigenous societies across North America engaged in complex exchange systems spanning hundreds, even thousands of miles. Shells from the Gulf Coast reached the Great Lakes. Copper from Lake Superior found its way to Florida. Obsidian from Wyoming traveled east. Perhaps Cades Pond pottery and shell items were highly valued commodities, traded northward in a chain of exchanges. Maybe Tennessee offered something equally precious in return, high-quality chert from sources like the Dover quarries, quartz crystals, or perhaps furs and medicines. Did these objects pass through dozens of hands over generations, moving slowly up ancient trails known only to the people who walked them? Their final resting place in caves suggests they were considered special, perhaps sacred, even hundreds of miles from home. But trade isn't the only possibility. Could people have moved? Was there a migration? While no evidence suggests the entire Cades Pond culture relocated to Tennessee, smaller groups or individuals might have undertaken an incredible journey. Were they refugees fleeing conflict or environmental change in Florida? Were they emissaries, healers, or traders who settled temporarily or permanently among Tennessee's cave-dwelling cultures? The presence of these artifacts deep inside caves sometimes associated with burials or ritual deposits, hints they weren't just lost trade goods. They were intentionally placed, perhaps by people who carried their Florida identity and beliefs with them into the mountains. What stories of displacement, alliance, or pilgrimage might these objects represent? Then there's the cave connection itself. Why were these far-traveled artifacts placed specifically in caves? Caves held deep spiritual significance for many southeastern cultures. They were often seen as portals to the underworld, places of power, transformation, and connection to ancestors. Depositing objects from a distant, perhaps mythologically significant land like the coastal realm of Florida might have held profound ritual meaning. Was it an offering to powerful subterranean spirits? A way to connect geographically distant sacred forces? Or a means for migrants to root their faraway heritage in the powerful landscape of their new home? The darkness of the cave preserved them, but it also sealed their context in shadow. The mystery deepens because we have no written records, no oral histories that clearly explain this specific link between Florida and Tennessee caves from 1,500 years ago. The Cades Pond culture itself faded, absorbed into later groups. The Tennessee cultures using the caves left no direct explanation. We're left with the silent artifacts, witnesses to an astonishing connection across half a continent. Their presence forces us to dramatically expand our understanding of ancient mobility and interaction. It reveals a continent far more interconnected, far earlier than traditional narratives often suggest. Holding a piece of Florida pottery found in a Tennessee cave is to hold a tangible thread stretching across mountains, rivers, and centuries. It speaks of journeys we can barely imagine, of networks of exchange and meaning that wove distant peoples together, and of the powerful pull of sacred places like caves to safeguard objects of deep significance. Why these objects? Why these caves? The answers are buried as deep as the artifacts themselves, waiting for the next clue to be unearthed, whispering of a time when 500 miles was not an insurmountable barrier, but a distance traversed by purpose, perseverance, and connections we are only beginning to glimpse. What other astonishing links between distant lands lie hidden in the dark soil of Tennessee, waiting to rewrite our map of the ancient past? Drive across Tennessee, and the landscape tells two very different stories. West of the Tennessee River, the earth rises in ancient shapes, monumental mounds, vast ceremonial centers like Pinson and Shiloh, testaments to powerful chiefdoms. But cross into the mountainous terrain of East Tennessee and these symbols of the past vanish. Where towering platforms once dominated the horizon, you find only forests, valleys, and silent ridges. This absence isn't just noticeable, it's profound. Why did the mound-building cultures that flourished across much of North America, and even in Middle and West Tennessee, seemingly bypass the East? What made these ancient mountains a landscape without monuments? The silence here speaks louder than any stone. The contrast is jarring. While Middle Tennessee boasts the Stone Box Graves and SECC sites, and West Tennessee cradles Pinson's giants, East Tennessee's archaeological record reveals only scattered, small-scale burial mounds, and a handful of modest platform mounds, nothing approaching the scale or complexity found elsewhere. This isn't due to a lack of people. East Tennessee was inhabited for millennia by sophisticated cultures like the Woodland and Mississippian peoples. They built villages, farmed river valleys, crafted intricate pottery, and engaged in long-distance trade. Yet, they largely refrained from reshaping their world into the colossal earthen pyramids that defined their neighbors. Why? Did the mountains themselves forbid it, or did the people hold a fundamentally different vision of the sacred? Geography offers the first clue, but not a complete answer. The rugged terrain of the Appalachians, with its steep slopes, narrow valleys, and thinner topsoil, certainly made massive earth-moving projects more challenging than on the broad, fertile floodplains of the Mississippi or Cumberland rivers. Moving millions of baskets of earth becomes exponentially harder when every load must be hauled uphill. Yet, challenge isn't impossibility. Ancient peoples built impressive structures in difficult environments worldwide. and East Tennessee does have suitable plateaus and river terraces. The sheer absence suggests something deeper than mere inconvenience. Was the earth here considered too sacred to reshape? Or did the mountains themselves serve as natural monuments, making artificial ones unnecessary? Perhaps the answer lies in cultural identity and belief systems. The Cherokee, who inhabited much of East Tennessee in later centuries, have rich oral traditions but notably lack stories of building giant platform mounds. Their ancestors were part of the broader Mississippian world, yet they seem to have consciously diverged. Did their cosmology prioritize harmony with the existing landscape over dominating it? Were their expressions of power and the sacred focused inward, on intricate rituals, storytelling, and portable art like the SECC symbols, rather than outward displays of monumental architecture? The mountains, often seen as dwelling places of spirits or ancestors, might have been revered as they were, their peaks and caves serving as natural temples requiring no human augmentation. Trade and interaction patterns might offer another piece. East Tennessee sat at a crossroads, connected to the Carolinas, Georgia, and the Ohio Valley. Yet, it wasn't a core area for the major Mississippian chiefdoms centered along the Mississippi or in Alabama. Was it a cultural periphery, where influences mingled but the intense social hierarchy and centralized authority needed to command mound-building labor never fully took root? Did communities here remain more decentralized, their leaders wielding influence through diplomacy, trade, or spiritual knowledge, rather than through the symbolic might of a towering earthen pyramid? The smaller mounds found, often used for burials rather than temples or elite residences, hint at a more egalitarian or clan-based social structure. Then there's the practical question of necessity. Mounds served multiple purposes: platforms for temples or elite homes, stages for public ceremonies, symbols of political power, and burial sites. In the densely populated river valleys, they organized space and visibly demonstrated a chief's authority. In the more dispersed settlements of the mountainous east, perhaps the need for such centralized, imposing symbols was less urgent. Community cohesion might have been maintained through other means: shared hunting grounds, kinship ties, or ceremonies held in natural amphitheaters formed by the hills themselves. Why build a mountain when you are surrounded by them? The mystery deepens when we consider that East Tennessee wasn't entirely devoid of earthworks. Sites like the Icehouse Bottom Mound near Vonore or the Taqua site on the Little Tennessee River show evidence of mound construction, but on a modest scale. These exceptions prove the rule. They are whispers where elsewhere there are shouts. What made these specific locations worthy of mounds when the surrounding landscape remained untouched by such ambition? Were they special gathering points, boundary markers, or the seats of rare, fleeting concentrations of power? Today, the absence haunts the landscape. Hiking through the Great Smoky Mountains or along the Nolichucky River, you might feel the weight of ancient presence: flint flakes in a field, pottery shards by a stream. But you won't find towering pyramids of earth. This negative space in Tennessee's archaeological record is a profound enigma. Did East Tennessee's ancient peoples consciously reject the mound-building impulse of their neighbors? Did their environment shape a unique spiritual path? Or is the evidence simply hidden, waiting beneath centuries of forest growth or modern development? The mountains keep their secrets close, leaving us to wonder why, in a land so rich with ancient life, the grandest gestures of earth and belief remain conspicuously, mysteriously missing. What profound understanding of place led them to leave the contours of the world unchanged? Imagine a city buzzing with life. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of people living within a protective palisade. Grand earthen mounds rise above thatched roof houses, platforms for temples and the homes of powerful leaders. Canoes ply the nearby Tennessee River, carrying goods and news. This was Shiloh, a major Mississippian cultural center flourishing around 800 years ago. Its scale was impressive: over 800 acres, featuring at least 8 large platform mounds, including one towering 50 feet high, surrounded by a vast village. Then, around 1450 AD, something happened. The bustling city emptied. The fires went cold. The mounds stood silent. By the time European explorers arrived centuries later, only overgrown earthworks hinted at its past glory. Why did Shiloh's people abandon their thriving city decades, even centuries, before outside contact? What silent crisis forced them to vanish? Shiloh wasn't just abandoned, it was meticulously left. Unlike sites showing evidence of violent conquest, burned palisades, mass graves, weapons embedded in bone, Shiloh reveals no signs of war. No skeletons lie sprawled in defensive postures. No arrowheads cluster in the soil as if from a final battle. The departure seems deliberate, almost orderly. Houses weren't burned, they were simply left to decay. Prized possessions weren't hastily buried, they were taken. This suggests a planned exodus, not a sudden catastrophe. But what could compel an entire population to leave their homes, their sacred mounds, and the fertile river valley that sustained them? One prevailing theory points to environmental strain. The Mississippians were intensive maize farmers. Centuries of cultivation around Shiloh might have exhausted the soil. Deforestation for building and fuel could have led to erosion, silting up crucial river channels or making floods more destructive. A series of bad harvests, triggered by drought or unpredictable weather shifts linked to the Little Ice Age, could have caused famine and social unrest. Evidence of soil depletion exists at other Mississippian sites abandoned around the same period. Did Shiloh's people simply outgrow their land's ability to feed them, forcing them to disperse into smaller, more sustainable communities? Social and political unraveling offers another compelling answer. Mississippian societies were highly stratified, ruled by powerful chiefs and priests whose authority rested on controlling food surpluses, trade, and religious ceremonies. If harvests failed, faith in this hierarchy could crumble. Internal conflict between elites or rebellion by commoners burdened by labor demands for mound building and tribute could have fractured the social order. Perhaps competing factions splintered, leading groups to leave and establish new villages elsewhere along the river or its tributaries. The lack of war damage suggests the collapse came from within, a failure of leadership or faith, not an external enemy. Disease is a darker possibility. While Old World epidemics arrived with Europeans, indigenous populations faced health challenges. Diseases spread through trade networks could have devastated Shiloh long before Columbus sailed. Skeletal evidence sometimes shows signs of malnutrition or infection, but pinpointing a specific plague is difficult. Could a devastating, unseen sickness have swept through, killing leaders, disrupting rituals, and shattering the community's spirit, forcing survivors to flee what they saw as a cursed place? Then there's the spiritual dimension. Mississippian life was deeply intertwined with cosmology. Mounds were sacred connections between earth, sky, and the underworld. Omens, unusual celestial events, prolonged droughts, or strange animal behavior could be interpreted as signs the gods were displeased with Shiloh. Perhaps priests declared the site spiritually polluted or that its sacred power had waned, necessitating a migration to a new center of the world. The careful lack of destruction supports this, abandoning a place without desecrating it, out of lingering respect or fear. The mystery deepens because we know they didn't vanish entirely. Descendant communities, likely ancestors of historic tribes like the Chickasaw or Choctaw, persisted in the region. Oral traditions might hold echoes of Shiloh's fate, but direct links are hard to prove. Why didn't they return? Why were the mounds never reoccupied, even as villages dotted the nearby landscape in later centuries? The site itself held power. It became part of the tragic Civil War battlefield centuries later, but its original builders never came back. Walking the grounds of Shiloh National Military Park today, the silence is palpable. The mounds, now grass-covered sentinels, loom over fields where history layered upon history. Archaeologists have mapped the post holes of vanished houses and cataloged broken pottery, but the reason for the exodus remains buried. Was it a slow decline or a single decisive moment? Did they leave with hope for a new beginning, or with hearts heavy from loss? The lack of violence suggests a conscious choice, but the scale of abandonment speaks of profound disruption. Shiloh stands as a ghost city of the ancient South, a stark reminder that even thriving civilizations are fragile. Its empty mounds ask haunting questions. What warnings did its people see that we cannot? What balance between humanity and the earth, or between rulers and the ruled, finally tipped beyond repair? And what lessons lie buried in their silent departure, waiting for us to uncover before our own cities face the test of time? Why did they choose to walk away from everything they'd built, leaving only earth and echoes behind? Walk through the woods of Middle Tennessee, and you might stumble upon a haunting sight. A half-formed earthen wall rising abruptly from the soil, its curve incomplete. A flat mound summit left bare, like a stage without performers. Ditches that dig deep into the earth before stopping mid-sweep. These are Tennessee's ghost mounds, monumental construction sites frozen in time. Tools lie where workers dropped them centuries ago. Baskets of soil petrify in forgotten piles. What terrifying event made ancient builders flee their sacred work? And why does this eerie stillness cling to sites scattered across the state? The evidence is visceral. At Sellers Farm near Lebanon, archaeologists uncovered a platform mound abandoned during its expansion. The base stood finished, but the final layer, meant to elevate it to greatness, was never added. Stone hoes rested against untouched soil piles as if waiting for hands that never returned. Further west at Mound Bottom, embankments framing a ceremonial plaza curve with perfect geometry, until one section collapses into formless rubble. Most chilling is the Grafenraid site. A burial mound's central tomb was excavated and lined with stone slabs, awaiting its occupant. But no body was ever laid to rest. These snapshots of interruption all date to the late Mississippian period, around 1300 to 1450 AD. Why would cultures that invested generations in sacred architecture suddenly vanish at the peak of their ambition? Theories emerge like shadows at dusk. First, environmental collapse. Tree ring records reveal Tennessee suffered crushing droughts in the 1300s. Rivers shriveled to trickles, springs vanished. Soil analysis at sites like Taqua shows farmland exhausted from centuries of maize farming. When survival demands every hand to hunt dwindling game or dig for wild roots, moving sacred earth becomes impossible. Did hunger finally drown devotion? Second, the unseen enemy. No battle scars mark these sites, no arrowheads lodged in bones, no burned palisades. But disease travels silently. Skeletal remains from this era show spikes in lesions and enamel defects, signs of famine and fever stalking together. A plague could have emptied villages, leaving too few to lift even a single basket. Third, divine wrath. The Mississippians saw mounds as bridges between worlds. An eclipse, earthquake, or comet might have been read as the gods rejecting the site. At Castalian Springs, an unfinished mound aligns perfectly with the solstice sunrise, but construction halted just before completing the celestial doorway. Did priests declare the ground cursed? Fourth, war's whisper. While no weapons clutter these sites, unfinished defensive walls at places like Gordontown hint at gathering storms. Raiders wouldn't need to attack, the mere threat could scatter workers. Why build monuments for a future you won't see? Fifth, rebellion. Centuries of commoners hauling soil for elite rulers breeds resentment. A failed harvest or a chief's cruelty could ignite revolt. At Link Farm, the central chief's mound stands finished, while mounds for lesser nobles lie abandoned. Did the people refuse to glorify their oppressors? The clues chill the blood. Tools left in working positions, a hammerstone gripped by dirt where it fell, a digging stick leaning against a ramp. No valuables remained. Precious copper and shell ornaments were carefully taken. This wasn't panic, it was purposeful exodus. At Duck River, soil layers show work ceased during the rainy season when fields lay fallow and labor should have been plentiful. What unseen tempest hit when defenses were lowest? A prophet's warning, a final, devastating omen. These unfinished mounds feel like interrupted prayers. The last baskets of earth were tossed without ritual care. Ramps built for construction became escape routes. What did they know in their final days? A coming darkness, a broken covenant with the land? Or did the very idea of building mountains from soil suddenly seem hollow? Tennessee's abandoned earthworks stand as frozen questions in clay and stone. They ask us, how thin is the thread holding civilization together? And what echoes from these forsaken sites might we still need to hear? Before the mound builders shaped Tennessee's valleys, older footsteps echoed here. Long before pyramids rose along the Mississippi, shadowy cultures moved through these forests and riverlands. They left no towering monuments, no carved chieftains, only whispers in the soil, a circle of darkened post holes on a forgotten bluff, abstract symbols deep in lightless caves, shell beads from distant seas cradled in ancient graves. These are Tennessee's first architects, people so ancient their names have dissolved into time. Who were they? And why do their faint traces unsettle us more than grand ruins? The proof emerges like fragments of a dream. At Icehouse Bottom near Vonore, beneath a later woodland mound, lies a stunning secret. The remains of a semi-subterranean ritual house made of bent saplings and woven clay. Carbon dating places it over 9,000 years old, deep in the Archaic period, an era we once thought defined by wandering hunters. Yet here stands sacred architecture millennia before Stonehenge's first stone. Far to the west at the Duck River's meeting with the Tennessee, fire-cracked stones form a perfect 40-foot circle. Nearby burials hold Gulf Coast conch shells and Arkansas quartz crystals. No villages, no mounds, only a ceremonial space humming with distant connections. Then there, Dunbar Cave, half a mile into perpetual darkness beyond where sunlight ever touched. Here on damp limestone walls, someone carved spirals, nested arcs, and radiating lines. Not animals or warriors. Pure, haunting geometry. What visions drove them so deep into the earth? Their silence is deafening. Unlike the Mississippians, these ancient ones left no grand stage for rulers, no temples gazing at the stars. Their sophistication hides in subtlety. Bone needles so fine they could stitch a mayfly's wing, or the oldest woven fabric in eastern North America, delicate cloth preserved beneath copper beads at Eva in Benton County, dating back 7,000 years. Who mastered these arts so long ago? Theories drift like river fog. Were they the river nations? Tennessee's waterways were ancient highways. Could seasonal gatherings have drawn people from the Ohio Valley, the Carolina foothills, and the Gulf Coast to places like Duck River, trading shells for crystal, stories for songs before scattering like autumn leaves? Their legacy, ritual grounds without permanent homes? Or does the empty wilderness myth blind us? Early archaeologists imagined archaic people as simple wanderers. But Icehouse Bottom's ritual house shatters that. What if they cultivated native sunflowers and goosefoot in hidden clearings, living semi-settled lives that left only faint stains in the earth? And what of the cave cult? Dunbar Cave isn't alone. 14 Tennessee caverns hold dark zone petroglyphs. Were certain clans drawn into the depths to commune with underworld spirits? The absence of tools suggests they brought nothing in and left only mysteries on the walls. The greatest enigma is the disconnect. Nothing clearly ties these ancient cultures to the later mound builders. No artistic evolution, no architectural inheritance. Around 1000 BC, Tennessee seems to hit a cultural reset button. Did the climate shift? Tree rings show drier centuries scattering river-focused groups. Did disease stalk them? Skeletons reveal periods of profound stress. Or did new arrivals bring different dreams, burying old ways beneath fresh soil? Standing at dusk where the Duck River meets the Tennessee, you feel their presence. Not in monuments, but in the rustle of cane brakes where fish traps once lay. In the gleam of a freshwater pearl mussel shell, a meal eaten 8,000 years ago. In the way shadows pool in that silent stone circle. These first Tennesseans whisper, civilization isn't just about moving mountains of earth. It's about the songs sung in firelight, the weight of a shell traded across mountains, the courage to carve symbols where no light reaches. What names did they give these rivers? What gods did they seek in the dark? And why did their footsteps fade so completely beneath the march of the mound builders? The oldest secrets leave the lightest traces and the heaviest silence. Tennessee's past is layered with mysteries, some buried deep in its hills, some etched into stone and others hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes to notice. The sights and stories we've uncovered tonight are only a fraction of the strange, the unexplained, and the forgotten history scattered across this land. Yet the more we uncover, the more the questions seem to multiply.